Hi, and welcome to syn101, class number 8. I'm John Montgomery, serving as always as the voice of Victor Wolanski, and Victor's got a fun shot for us this week in the class. It's admittedly, Victor says, not the most difficult shot in the world to get a track on, but it's going to have a lot of fun stuff that you can do with it and stuff to learn as well, and enables to show us a lot of principles and so forth. So I think we'll really get a kick out of this. It's from a commercial that Victor did, but it's going to be an opportunity to do some animation and so forth in it. So he already tracked it, imported it into 3ds Max, and added a few objects and so forth. This is just really quick that he did this in. Just wants to point out it's doing the tracking, doing the objects, doing the render, doing the whole deal was actually only about an hour long. And what Victor would like you guys to do is do the same kind of thing, but add maybe some kind of like robot or something like that that's going through the room. You got some nice gags here, the closed door waiting for it to open and so forth, some people that it can avoid running into and so forth. Maybe it's one of those Roomba vacuum cleaners or something like that. But again, this shot that he did here is very rough, but you have a lot of opportunities and things to do. The reflection in the door, you might want to mess around with shadows that are being cast on the object in the scene and so forth. But it's really a great opportunity, great scene to add some stuff to, and we hope you enjoy doing it. So the first thing in looking at the sequence, Victor wants to mention right off the bat, is that it has some lens distortion. Now, it's not the worst lens distortion in the world. It's actually a really nice, a really high-quality lens without a lot of distortion, but there is some stuff in it. So at this point in thinking about it, you've got to think about when you want to deal with the distortion first or after tracking shot. What is the difference? If you want to deal with it in the beginning, what you can do is you have to describe what the scene is and stuff within the scene, undistort the image, track on top of the undistorted image, go ahead and export that data, do the compositing, and then add the distortion back on top of it. That's if you want to maintain the distortion. But he's not going to do that in this case. Basically thinking about the way the shot works and what you want to add in the shot and what he's going to do. Not going to actually distort the image, and he's going to add a little bit of distortion maybe to the 3D element, needs it in the scene. And in this case, you have a little 3D element down there on the square. It's actually not taking up that much in the edge of the scene. You might not actually need to compensate for the 3D distortion in the scene, or the lens distortion in the scene, excuse me, because it's not that bad and it might be passing through it. Again, the idea is to create a believable shot and so forth. That's when you want to do it. But what's cool about Synthesize, all that being said, is Synthesize can actually help figure that lens distortion automatically for you. So instead of you having to manually do it, Synthesize can actually do that for you. And so we're going to use that Synthesize functionality for discovering the distortion automatically and apply that. So the first thing we'll do is go ahead and come here. And the shot's already actually been tracked. We created the trackers and so forth in this shot. So we'll go ahead and we're going to bring all the blips. So we're going to blips on all frames. Load them up here, and you'll see that we've got quite a few, and a lot of them are actually really good. There's actually a little bit of noise in it where some of them aren't so good, but there are lots of objects to track, and lots of them are actually really good trackers. So. But this process now, we're just going to go ahead and peel all of them and take a look, and then we'll go back and get rid of getting rid of the bad trackers and figuring out which ones are bad and which ones we want to remove from the scene in order to help us get a good 3D solve. So that one there on the shirt, on her hand, this person moving here. Again, you've seen this before. We just want to go. If you look at the floor, you've got some things on the floor. They might be good, but in reality, those are actually reflections that are visible, so they have the appearance of moving around. So we don't want to be tracking on those objects. Got that one on her arm there. And again, we'll just go through here. If we take a look in the back, we've got one on her hair, one in the back that's not very good. On the guy, the logo here, the Pfizer logo on the person. So the idea is just, taking a look at stuff that's attached to things that are moving. They're just simply bad trackers. Look like they're not holding on. That one wasn't holding on, probably because of the shadow there. And then one on sky. Let's go ahead and see if there's any more. Let's go ahead and, now that we've deleted some of those trackers, let's go ahead and do our first attempt at the solve of the scene and see where we're at and see where our problem areas might be. Make sure you click on Calculate Distortion under the Lens panel, because you're going to want the software to calculate for that, and you're going to need it. So we'll go ahead and click Go here and let it figure out and try and solve the scene for us and see what we end up with. And probably, as you can guess, we're going to end up with something that's not quite right, and we have to go ahead and use the skills that we've acquired and try to improve the scene. And sure enough, it's done. And if you look straight away, you can see, in looking at the camera path right here, check out that curve start. Something has gone heinously bad here. You can see all those trackers in the background just kind of going crazy and not locked. So what we'll do is similar to what we've done in the past. We'll go ahead and delete that. And let's go to work here in the specific part of the scene and try and narrow down and get a closer look at what's going wrong and what's causing our problems in this area. You can see you've got one on the guy back there in the background as well that's not working for us, and on the hand as well. Just scroll through. You can actually see them kind of click in there. You've got one there on the arm and one on our talent's face. And again, that's just looking at that area where we're having the problem now. There's really, you don't see anything in there that we really need to fix. It's probably going to help us. So I'll go ahead and click Go and see what happens. And the lens is actually closer to the actual lens. And you can see straight away that our path is much better. It's doing a nicer job of resembling our camera and our scene. Just as an overall, we have a little errors right there, but it's much closer to what we need, and the camera lens is also much closer than the original in the scene. So let's go ahead and take a look a little bit closer and see if we can find our problem areas, a little more minor problem areas, and see if we can get rid of them. So we've got you can see right there, there's something giving you some trouble. So now we've looked at examining visually stuff on the scene before, but there are some other ways in which we can look and see what tracker is not treating us well, I guess, if you could say. What we're going to go ahead and do, let's go ahead and delete that solve. A good way of doing that is to go ahead and examine the tracker animation channels. And they'll provide a lot of clues to us in where something might be going wrong. So go ahead and switch to the individual channel views, and now you can just kind of scroll through and select each of these trackers and take a look at the graph and see if there's anything that sounds out really badly, I should say. You know, these are looking good. There's some frequency noise and so forth that you're going to get in them, but the key is looking for some unusual spike in these trackers. And then you can see here, this is a really good example of something that really looks wrong. You can see we just select that, and so we'll go ahead and slide this over here, and it selects it in the scene. You can actually see that. Look at it moving there near his eyes. You can see it's actually moving around and then finally locks. And in the graph editor, you actually have a visual representation of that as well. So again, you know, these couple frames, it's moving around, and you can see that. Again, you would have not needed actually to really look at that within the scene. So we'll go here and switch the tracking panel. Go ahead and open this up. Switch that to backwards. Remember, we can delete all the keyframes from our previous class here. Go ahead and click on now, shift in that. And you can see that we deleted the frames prior to frame 30 like we did in a week before, after the fact. And then we'll go ahead and close that up and lock it again. And then what you can do is just go ahead and kind of examine some other tracks that looks bad. And you can see here, tracker 28, yep, sure enough, it looks bad in our graph editor, looks bad in the scene. So go ahead and take that, open it up, change the direction there, and then delete all the keyframes from that point back to the start. And then close it. And we'll be able to see here if we have any other kind of bad trackers. This is a really great way of seeing if they're giving us a problem as opposed to just kind of looking in the scene. Of course, obviously you're going to be able to, see them in the scene, but the graph editor is a great way to do that. Now you can tell right now, notice how it's yellow there in the tracker 32. That's because we're actually not in a visible frame, and there, that tracker is active now. See a little chiclet change to green. You can see that's green. It's currently active. Again, this is a good point to go ahead and delete that and get rid of any kind of spikes. And then you can see it. There's a good example of that. So go ahead and, just looking at that, that's going to give us a problem. We'll just go ahead and not even examine it. Open it, switch that to backwards because we want to delete the keyframes file and delete those. Again, this is just a great way of quickly finding stuff. And this way, what you can do is you don't have to delete whole trackers. You might assume that the tracker's bad, but in this case, what we're able to do is maintain a good amount of tracking data. For instance, this one's got about 50 good frames for us, and we're able to keep that while only getting rid of the last couple frames that are in fact bad. If we keep looking, we'll keep looking for trackers that are not good. It's a really great way to find these. And again, when you select a tracker, you get a little quick circle in the scene, kind of pointing out where that tracker is for you to help you find it and see if it's good or not good. Just a quick little heads up for that. So then you can kind of see, okay, it's not looking all that great. So we'll cancel those by turning it off and close it again. That's good. It effectively gets rid of those bad frames. And again, this is a really important part of the process to kind of go through and find anything that might not be working for us. It's going to help your solve tremendously. Here's one that might be not good. This one actually is part of this guy here. So we'll just totally delete that point as opposed to going and refining it. You also got a point there on him and there. Again, it's nice to be able to see these kind of pop on so you can locate them. And just work our way down the list of trackers to find some bad points. And here's one. And you can see what's happening, kind of similar to what we saw earlier as things are being revealed. The door is causing a bit of problems on the first couple frames, so we'll get rid of those. That one's okay. You can actually see down that one on the bottom that's on the carpet, and it's really, if you think about it, that carpet's got a little bit of grain or texture. It's actually tracking nothing, tracking noise, and probably shifting around. So in looking at that, it's probably a good idea to just go ahead and get rid of that tracking point that doesn't seem to be really tracking anything at all on the ground. Let's go ahead and select that and delete it. And again, this takes a little bit of time. It's natural. I mean, spend some time now and you'll be really served better by really making sure that everything's accurate, because just as you've seen, any little tracker that's not good is going to cause you problems to solve. That one's on the carpet, so get rid of that one. Now actually, if you look here, it's starting to turn green, or starting to warn that you're maybe running out of trackers here. You have kind of borderline there in the number of trackers you have, and trackers that aren't good enough to have a good solve. So by deleting a couple of these frames, you have fewer points. We'll delete that one. So let's go ahead and take a look at all these trackers here. Another example of the door kind of obscuring the point and then shifting around. Richard says it's always, a good time to spend is this process here, making sure that you've got really rock solid trackers that are going to serve us. There you go. That's really bad as well. off and lock it. Not bad. That one. That one. The rest seem to be pretty much okay. So let's go ahead and see what we get here with the solve. See if we get any better than what we did last time. Let it go. And it's looking better. I mean, again, we talk about these number values, but if you look at it, it's a good frame of reference point to talk about. That's got a 5.58. And if you look at the path here, it looks much smoother, relatively good compared to what we had before. You got a little bit of noise here in the path. We'll scroll through here. Let's take a look here. Take some of these points here that are on the ceiling that are currently now automatic trackers, and actually taking them. Let's go ahead and scroll and find one. Like these two, that one's, you know, if you take a look at it, that's not really locked into anything, so we'll delete those. So now what we want to do is maybe consider taking these automatic trackers and converting them to manual trackers, like such as this one. So go ahead there. Set the key of 12, what we did last time, and a little bit of smoothness as well here. There we go. You got a tracker now that has a lot less noise than the automatic tracker did, because we talked about these manual trackers work really well. Take this tracker here. Let's go ahead and check out the curves of it. You can see here, this is that noise that we were talking about earlier. It's just really noisy, and we'll go ahead and expand that out so you can see it. So as we make some adjustments to it, you can see what kind of impact we're having on the curves. So come here. Now this is the automatic tracker, right? And it's going off there. What we're going to do is switch that to manual tracker. And then we're going to go ahead and take a look at it moving forward. And you can see that it's actually enabled us to actually track that actual point much longer than we were previously with the automatic tracker. So just by switching it over to manual, really helped us quite a bit. If we want to, let's go ahead and finalize the tracker. Take a live update and you can see what's happening. Now that's a lot of smoothing. That filter strength is set at 1 and filter frames at 7. But you probably don't want to have it that smooth, because there was always going to be a little bit of noise in your scene. And if you smooth it way too much, you start introducing a lot of camera drift and so forth. So treat it gently. Bring your filter strength down. Wind back in a little bit of the noise and adjust that and play with it. But that live update is really nice to be able to see it, smooth it, and adjust it versus getting go and then applying that change. It gives you a great opportunity to undo that. So if we take a look at this, if you check it out, you can see that one's really noisy as well. We'll do the same thing here. So go ahead and change this from an automatic tracker to a manual tracker, and having it go longer, just to have our point on the screen a little bit longer. So we'll go ahead and get back here, open it up, turn it on, switch this over here. That enables us to do that. Yeah. And then the key or key smooth won't have an impact. And then go ahead and go forward. And you can see we get a significantly larger number of frames by doing this. And you can see it's still a little bit noisy and so forth. We'll take a look at that, and we'll go ahead and clean that up a little bit. So we'll select the Finalize tool. And you can click the live update to see the preview before you actually apply it. And we'll go ahead and click OK. So you can do this with a lot of the trackers if you want. It's maybe not a huge deal in our case because we know this shot is done on a Steadicam, so the shot is actually probably quite smooth. So a little bit of the smoothness adding that we're doing is probably not going to hurt our track. You're more than likely to hurt your track more if you've got less than steady camera movement. You're going to run in a situation where you're likely to make your camera solve worse than better. Now this is the final solve that we have here. The path looks pretty good if we look at the top view. But now on the side view, if we kind of scroll in here, we're still getting a little bit of a dip here. Actually, front view, excuse me. We can see a little bit of a dip that's going on here that we need to figure out what isn't working and what it might be and why it might not be working. So let's go ahead and see what it might be. We'll go ahead and delete that solve. Take a look at it. It's a little bit hard to find. So maybe you want to take a little bit of the curves of smoothing out a little bit, and take a look at the curves actually also to see what tracker is looking bad. And then we're going to do that and then stop recording and come back when we've got that ready. It's likely that you might not find the same problems that Victor did, but have a go at it. Now what Victor did here in the end was actually end up adding a bunch of manual trackers here at the beginning so that we could get rid of a lot of the vibration that was going on within the scene. And then there were actually a couple trackers that were actually on our talent as well. And when the body was moving, that's obviously going to cause a problem, as were a couple other reflections that Victor didn't catch the first time through. And if you look at this path, the path is much smoother than what it was before. So now what we want to do is take a look at aligning our scene and getting everything set correctly. We'll go ahead and set here. Our lens distortion has already been entered. It's just a little bit, a tiny value within the scene. Well, if we go ahead here and actually take a look at the image, and you can actually see that. So let's go ahead and add a few lines here to the scene. So go ahead and match the tile on the floor. Draw it there. And we're going to say this is parallel to the Y. You gotta love grids when you're doing stuff like this. I think we should always shoot scenes with built-in grids. And we'll move this one back here and make this one to be parallel to the Y. And even check out the syn101 straight up and down. This will, of course, be the Y-axis here. And then we'll do the same thing. Draw this. And that's going to be parallel to X. Same on the X actually for that one. Back here. Parallel to X. And I'll pick this nice back wall here. This is also parallel to X. I'll go ahead and click Align. We take a look at what we have here on the side, and it's looking pretty good. You can notice we don't have any trackers on the floor. That's why there's that big gap there, so there's nothing obvious. So let's go through the scene and find one that is actually on the floor. So select that point and go ahead and change the color here. And by changing the color, this will be really easy to pick out in the scene. Go ahead and camera, lock the camera. Go ahead and, it's been a while since we've done this, but click hole. And then grab that point. And we're going to use this point on the floor as our origin point. So I'm going to put that in the left view just so it's resting on the ground. And then top view, we'll go ahead and move it so it's also resting right on the origin. There's 0, 0, 0, 0 point. So let's go ahead and switch over and see how we're looking here. Perspective. And then we're going to get that camera locked in. And you can see that we've got a pretty nice ground plane aligned very well with the solution. It works out very well, and very happy with that. Now, we're going to do, before we go in, we're going to actually show you a little bit of stuff in Max, but let's just go really quick foreshadowing of new stuff that we're going to do. It's not going to be perfect by any stretch, but let's just go ahead and get our feet wet with this idea of doing object tracking within syn101. Maybe whet your appetite to kind of try it on your own and see if you want to play with it, and then we'll cover more stuff in the future where we can cover this in more detail and do a better job of it. So this is a good one, this little petri dish looking thing. It's a good thing. It's got built-in tracking markers for us already. So we'll go ahead and come to the solve and make sure you've got the camera selected. We're going to go ahead and disable the camera, okay? So that we're not going to make any changes or do any more calculations related to the camera. We're done with that. It's the really safest way of working with this. Where we're going to go next is we're going to go ahead and add a moving object to the scene. And so notice that toggle switch here. You can switch between object and camera. So go ahead and switch back here to the view and notice that the camera tracker's there, and then object, we don't have anything. All the trackers are not selected, and they're actually all disabled. Okay, so this is the way you know that they're not your trackers for your object. So all the stuff that you're going to do now, everything that we're working on, whether it's adding trackers or moving them or repositioning stuff, it's going to be related to this new object 1. Okay, so we're going to go back here and we're going to get to our blip panel. And notice we have a lot of tracking points, and notice there are actually some right here as well selected already. So let's go ahead and peel them. We'll go ahead and peel the objects from the petri dish, or whatever it's called. I'm trying to pretend I'm a scientist. So select these. You can actually add some if you need to on a scene, but again, we're just trying to get our idea about, show you the concepts of what it takes to start doing object tracking. I'll select that point. It's a good one on the finger there. So now, you know, this will be enough for now, and you can kind of finish up or find another scene that you might want to do for object tracking. But what we want to do is actually switch over and come here. And if you take a look at this already, what we're going to do is we're going to track this over a certain number of frames. We're going to do a solve for this object. And you look in this case, we'll scroll through, it looks like we're pretty good up until about frame 28 or so. We'll stop at 29. That we've got good to solve. Now, if you look into here in the UI, it does actually automatically do this. You can see a begin and an end down here. We have 0 and 30 right now. That's where these trackers are existing. We want to modify this. Go ahead and take this value down to, say, back here, okay, to 28, okay? And then we're going to start here on frame 1. And now what we can do is hit go. And now you can see you have a second path here and an object that's got a motion of a scene, or motion of the object, or what the software has calculated as the motion of the object. But now what we need to do is we actually need to scale this object back, get it closer to the camera, okay? So, because right now it's really far away from the camera, the way it's pushing that path, or positioned it here within the scene. So unlock it. Got our box selected. Select the object. Take our scale and scale it down. And so now our object is closer to the camera. If we take a look at the perspective view, you can see that you've got the objects here. And the first few frames, they shot much closer to the camera and where it should be. If you want, you can add some more tracking points and so forth. If this is in reality, you might actually want to take that in and actually do the manual object tracking later once you get this into the 3D application. But now that we've done that and had a quick thing to hopefully whet your appetite on that, what we're going to do is export this into Max. To the desktop and save that. And then we're going to dive into Max and kind of show how you might approach setting up the scene and using the scene in a 3D application as opposed to just within syn101. And we can load in some objects and animate an object in the scene from what we took a look at the first part of the class, and really like for you to do this yourself. Have you be our exercise for the week is doing this yourself. So now we've brought this into Max, and you can see you've got the camera motion in the scene and the object as well. And the object that we brought in, of course, we need to do a little bit of work with it, actually. We'll go ahead and zoom in here. It's quite big. We can just take it and actually scale it down to maybe a more reasonable size and so forth. Zoom in, work with this in a better angle here. Scale that and make it smaller within the scene. But again, you get the idea of how you might do this. Again, just showing you how this might work for you. We'll display the background now. Now you can see that we got the little object here tracked in on this scene for a free frame. Again, you might want to do that manually, obviously. The path will continue on and you have to modify that within your 3D application. But we're going to go ahead and take that and hide that for now and talk about how we set up the objects in this scene and how we achieve some of the rendering effects to make the object look rendered in the scene. So what Victor did is take it, added a ground and objects within the scene. So he's going to go ahead and load up that scene and take a look at it. And here you can see what we've got going on. Looks pretty much like what we had before. We've got two objects for the ground. We have one here in the foreground. And if we want to take a look at this, it's got different material properties. It's a matte shadow. And what it'll allow us to do is have us cast shadows and catch reflections and so forth on it. But on top of that, when he set it up, what we want to do, take a look at it. So we end up seeing is you actually don't see anything. You see the background, and so all you get is the reflection and shadow that's caught by that object. So you're actually not seeing the ground plane when it's rendered. You're seeing effectively the effects that are associated, which is the reflection and the shadow. And so now you can see there's an object for the door there as well. We've got a door mapped to where the door actually is, but that allows us to kind of hide the object as it passes behind the door. It gets cut off, and it'll also, I think as you saw, we had a little bit of a reflection in the beginning, but in this case it's actually obscuring the object that's behind it. And then you've got another object here on the wall. You can see on the right side there, so that when the box passes behind the wall. And then of course we have another object here on the floor. It's got similar material that we have, but if you take a look at it, the reflection amount is in 0, as opposed to that shot that was out on the tile floor that had a reflection amount of 100, giving us the reflections in the scene. So again, not really many 3D objects here, a couple ground planes and doors. We hope you enjoyed this class. We'd really love for you to take the scene and track it and add some kind of robot or add a Roomba, maybe a little vacuum thing in the scene, something like that that you can do and show off in the forums. Upload in the forums a medium to low quality, reasonable size, a standard definition size or so forth, QuickTime movie. And we'd love to see some of the work on the scene that you have done. So until next week, thanks for being a member of FXPhD, and we'll talk to you in the forums.